my friend Dr. Chopra here is someone that my wife believes saved her life. Yeah, it's a true story. Yeah. Well, you talked before, and I did also, about this idea of the source. What is the source? You know, I remember being a little boy living out at this foster home in Mount Clemens, and we had this practice in the spring where Mrs. Scarf would take a big bag full of dried tomato seeds. I was little, I was 4, my brother Dave was 5, he was with me, and I was the digger. I had this little hand shovel, and I would dig a hole, and Mrs. Scarf would take the dried tomato seeds and put them in the ground, and then I would cover it over, and Dave would take the sprinkler can and he'd pour water on it. We'd put a stake in there, and then we'd move 3 feet away, and then we'd do it again. And we did it through this whole plot of land. And I can remember asking, as if this were yesterday, I said to Mrs. Scarf, I said, where do these tomatoes come from? And she said, oh, God brings us the tomatoes. So I said, well, if God brings us the tomatoes, what are we doing all of this for? You know, what's that? It seems like a heck of a way to have to do it if God's going to bring us the tomatoes. She said, oh, no, the tomatoes are in the seeds. And I had this idea, like, there's tomatoes in the seeds. And as a little boy, I was thinking about that, and my brother was in 1st grade, or kindergarten, and he had one of those plastic rulers with a magnifying glass on the end of it, you know, that just doubled. And I told him, go get your magnifying glass. And we took some of those tomato seeds, and we went out in the back in the chicken coop and cut open the seeds, literally. And I took his magnifying glass, and I'm looking in there for little miniature tomatoes. Now, 50 years and more have come and gone, and I know now that what Deepak was talking about, when you take that tomato seed and you put it under a microscope and turn up the magnification, first you'll find molecules and mostly spaces and atoms, and then you'll take the spaces out and you put an atom under the microscope and you'll see mostly spaces, and now you see electrons and protons and croutons and neutrons and, you know, whatever those things are that are in there, right? But it's mostly spaces. And then you take the electron and you put it under an electron microscope and you turn up the magnification, more spaces, mostly spaces, and you take out and you get subatomic particles, and you keep going. All you're doing is looking for where the tomato comes from. Where's the source of tomato? You get to the tiniest subatomic particle, you put it in a particle accelerator, you increase it up to 250,000 miles an hour and collide them. You open up the accelerator and you realize there's nothing there. There's no thing there. And the weirdest part of all is that when you look at it, it changes it. That the observer really affects the creation process. Now you take the same seed that began you. You thought you started at some quantum picnic, right? 9 months before your birth. So you take this seed that began you, and you do the same experiment with it. You just keep turning up the magnification and taking out the space, and guess what? Guess where you came from? No thing. No thingness. The source. See, in India, they talk about these people that we've been referring to, people like Jesus, people like Buddha, people like Muhammad, these great spiritual teachers, they call them non-dual beings. Somehow they've transcended this duality of the physical plane. You know, the physical plane, you've never seen a person with a front who doesn't have a back, have you? You know, a person who is an outside who doesn't have an inside. Everything in the physical world has its opposite. To get past the physical world, you have to go to the world of no duality. And that is the equivalent of 0, mathematically. 0 is the number that you cannot cut in half. There's only one 0. And the equivalent of 0 is called silence. And silence is the place where you go to. Melville said, God's one and only voice is silence. When you go to silence, you literally go to the place within you that can no longer be divided. And that's where you make conscious contact. That's why meditation, or getting quiet, and discovering that place within you that can no longer be divided, is really, literally, the source of all manifestation. And no matter where you go, I mean, I've talked to my friend here many times about it, and I'll call him up about something that's bothering me, this, and you know what he always says to me? Meditate. Meditate on it, Wayne. I'll call Rita. I'll say, Rita, she'll say, meditate. I said, Rita, I'm having a problem with one of my kids. What does she say? Tell him to meditate. Right, Rita? I mean, but the truth of it is, what they're saying is, shatter the illusion of your separateness, which is what meditation does. And make conscious contact. When you go there, then you discover the light that you were talking about, the being of light. And that's why meditation isn't just something that you do to have a peaceful existence. It's something that you do to make conscious contact with the creation process. and begin to manifest.
There's a Vedic expression, in every seed is the promise of 1,000 forests and more. In every seed is the promise of 1,000 forests and more. Meditation is that ability to go beyond thought. The ability to think is an extraordinary human ability, but even more extraordinary is the ability to not think. And I'd like to end tonight's session with a quote from Franz Kafka, who, when he spoke about meditation, he said, "You need not do anything, just remain quiet. Remain sitting quietly at your table, and the world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet."
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.